Okay, last siman in Chelek Gimel. He's changed it from Shin Mem Daled, which spells Shmad, to Shin Daled Mem, as often is the case whenever it spells something negative. Din Ha'ilech B'Midbar B'Shabbos. It's a very interesting siman. What happens if a person is kidnapped, or if a person is lost in a wilderness and doesn't know which day is Shabbos? So says the Mechaba. I think we only have time for Aleph now. Somebody who goes in the wilderness, and he loses track and he doesn't know when Shabbos is. He counts 7 days from when he realizes he doesn't know that he's lost, when he's lost track of time. And he makes Kiddush and Havdalah. And if he's got food and he can keep himself alive, he on that day which he declares as Shabbos, i.e. 7 days from when he realizes that he's forgotten when Shabbos is, he should use up his stores, his provisions, and then on subsequent days he should do melacha every day to earn some money. Even on the next week, which for him is Shabbos, he's allowed to do the minimal amount of melacha, the small amount of melacha to sustain himself. But he's allowed to continue to travel on that Shabbos, which according to him is Shabbos, because otherwise he'll never get out of this midbar, and therefore we want him to, ultimately get out of that situation. Says the Mishnah Berurah, so too, that if a person, Rachmana litzlan, is captured, and he doesn't know which day is Shabbos, I'm reading at the moment the book by Rabbi, one of the hostages who came out. So someone gave me this book. So it's absolutely fascinating, and it's tragic. Really, it's horrific. But it's a very engaging read. But he talks about there were 4 of them together for almost all the time, and they made Kiddush and Havdalah every single Shabbos. Of course, they didn't have wine or grape juice. They did it on a cup of water. I guess they could have done it on the pita bread that they would receive. But in that situation, they actually could keep cheshbon of when Shabbos was. But in a situation where sometimes you can't, then that's what you do. So when you realize you don't know it's Shabbos, says the Mechaba, you count 7 days from that moment. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah, Sifkatan base, miyom shenosan, when you realize, hey, one second, I've lost track, I don't know when Shabbos is, count 7 days from that point. And that day that you're not sure, that's considered Sunday. That's considered the first day of the 6-day week, and then the 7th day will be Shabbos. But Kiddush v'Avdalah, says the Mishnah Berurah, you make it normally on bread or on wine. Now, why is that? Because chances are it's not Shabbos, right? We don't know. It's machlokes in the Gemara exactly how you cheshbon it and whatever. But either way, Chazal, this is what we're saying over here. But the Chachomim were masakin that you've got to have some zikaron. Shelo tishtakach Torah Shabbos mimenu, that you shouldn't forget the concept of Shabbos. V'im ein lo yikadesh al yedei tefillah. And if you haven't got bread or wine, then you should be mekadesh through tefillah, like we do on Yom Kippur when it falls on Shabbos. The hot tefillah hu b'mispal shel Shabbos could be b'yom zeh. When you daven Shabbos, tefillahs, the note says you daven Musaf as well. For Yetzi b'zeh midaraisa, and min ha-Torah, you've been fulfilled your obligations to Mekadesh Shabbos. Va'afilim hayoim hu be'emes Shabbos, even if today is really Shabbos, k'mavulei elbas siman reish ayin aleph Mishnah Berurah ayin sham. V'gam yavda b'tefillah, and you can also make Havdalah on the Motzei Shabbos. Sha'im atachin antonu v'yetzi b'zeh be'yatchak mitzvah Havdalah. Minimally, you have fulfilled the mitzvah of Havdalah. Min ha-Torah at least. Even if you haven't got, you've got a bit of bread, if you have provisions on that first Shabbos, 7 days after you realize that you're not sure what day it is, then if you've got enough provisions, then you can't do any melacha that first Shabbos. Not a case of pikuach nefesh. In the money that you've got or the provisions you have, or you can sell something in order to have a bit of money, or you can borrow, or get a gift from them. Then you can't do. It's also to do any melacha on that day which you cheshbon as Shabbos. And that means on every subsequent day you can't do more than the minimal amount because it could be the Shabbos. Why? The Hakol Yom who's Sofik Shabbos. Va'af al gav the Reiv Hayomim hu Yemechol. Even though the majority will tell you that it's actually a weekday, Zeh Mikri Kavua. This day you've now fixed as Shabbos. The Hayom Shabbos Min Kalakolhu, because it's sort of that you've set it aside. It's recognizable that it's Shabbos. That's how you've cheshboned it. How much can you do on every subsequent day? Kadei parnasosim mutzum tzemes. Avul yoim, akol yoim nami koi, on all the subsequent days. She'ena rishai lehistakim meloch yoseh. You can't go more than what you actually need. Even on the Friday, according to your cheshbon, that you're going to prepare for your Shabbos, that you shouldn't have to do melacha. You can't do more than is necessary. Why? Because maybe you were wrong, and maybe today this what you think is Friday is actually Shabbos, or the following day is actually a weekday. And therefore it doesn't give you a green light. Because it's not pikuach nefesh. But to do the minimal amount that you need, pikuach nefesh, I need a bit of bread or whatever it may be, that is allowed. Otherwise you'll die of hunger in this midbar or in captivity, whatever the situation is. And if it happened on one day, you made a little bit more than you need for that daily quota, that doesn't allow you tomorrow to carry on, but you've got to eat up tomorrow what you had over from today. You're allowed to walk as much as you want. Become a parsois, a long distance. Because if you're going to limit the amount you can walk and you'll stay in the midbar forever, then you'll be mechal Shabbos for the rest of your life, and you'll live and you'll die in this random faraway place. And what was that going on? The last bit. Even the day which you think is Shabbos. Says the Mishnah Berurah, because we do that to allow you to get out of the midbar quickly. We don't restrict the amounts of walking you can do. And therefore we allow you to walk as much as possible to get out of this place. Avashar isurim, but other isurim, afilu ein rak shvus drabanan, on the day which you cheshbon is Shabbos, you can't even do a drabanan. Or by Eli Rabba mekel b'shvus, afilu b'yom shvi given to raks sofik drabanan. The Eli Rabba, however, is mekel to allow you to do a drabanan because ultimately it's a sofik and it's a sofik in a drabanan. Therefore, they would allow it. Okay, Miz Hashem. Tomorrow we'll finish off this siman and a little bit at the end of the Mishnah Berurah. Say that.